当“一带一路”遇上复兴丝绸之路。
When One Belt and One Road initiative was officially announced back in 2013, Azerbaijan already for some time has played a role of a connector between different continents.
高加索硝烟再起，阿塞拜疆、亚美尼亚离和平还有多远？
The proof of the pudding is in the eating, so you have not only to pronounce certain statement, but also to deliver on its implementation.
风云对话专访阿塞拜疆第一副总统外事助理阿米尔别科夫。近日，风云对话摄制组走进阿塞拜疆驻华大使馆。这座使馆是阿塞拜疆在国外最大、最宏伟的建筑之一。它于2022年中阿两国建交30年之际揭幕，汲取了诸多阿塞拜疆文化内涵和设计元素。
This is golden area, as you know.
Yes.
Islam is a golden area. President Xi Jinping meets President Aliyev.
在这里，我们见到了这座官邸的主人阿塞拜疆大使杰纳利，并在他的引荐下见到了今天的采访嘉宾——阿塞拜疆第一副总统外事助理阿米尔别科夫。
He's the founder of Contemporary of Azerbaijan, and back in 1994, when he paid his first official visit to China, that's the same person.
阿米尔别科夫正是1994年时任总统盖达尔·阿利耶夫访华团中的一员。阔别近30年的时间，他再次回到北京，彼时访华的场景，阿米尔别科夫依然感觉历历在目。
Ambassador Əmirbəyov, it's great to have you on Talk with World Leaders. It's your second visit to Beijing, is it?
That's right, yes. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you. Indeed, this is my second visit after almost 30 years of absence.
What was the first time?
The first time was in March of '94, when I had the privilege of accompanying our President Heydar Aliyev at the time. And it was first official visit of head of Azerbaijani state to the People's Republic of China. And of course, time flies fast, so we're now in 23, and it's a pleasure to discover Beijing again.
Sure. And what's your agenda for your visit this time?
Well, the agenda is to, first of all, to underline Azerbaijan's desire to deepen and to strengthen the political dialogue with our Chinese colleagues and friends. We think that we have excellent quality of the high-level dialogue because Xi and also President Aliyev, they have developed excellent bilateral relations. They have met several times, and of course it has influenced the quality of this evolution of this relationship. But also the second reason is to brief our friends here in Beijing about the Azerbaijani assessment of the current situation and the prospects for the peace process, which is now being built, in the South Caucasus region between Azerbaijan and Armenia, because we know how important China's role is in the international relations. Of course, you are a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. You are a friendly country to Azerbaijan. We consider China to be our strategic partners.
中阿之间的故事古来有之，或史诗般的浪漫神话，或丝路上的络绎商旅。政治互信是中阿关系的基石。1992年建交以来，两国高层交往密切，中阿两国在国家发展战略上也高度契合。 近年来，为对接“一带一路”倡议，阿塞拜疆启动了许多大型基础设施项目，包括巴库国际海上贸易港、巴库第比利斯卡尔斯跨国铁路等。两国在经贸、交通、能源、通信等领域务实合作不断深化，双边贸易额由建交之初的150万美元增至峰值期的近20亿美元，增长超过1200倍。 中国是阿第4大贸易伙伴国，第3大进口来源国。在人文交流上，两国的合作机制不断完善。 地方、高校、智库、媒体、文艺团体交流密切，汉语热不断升温，众多优秀青年赴华留学发展，进一步促进了两国的民心相通。
Now, back in September 2022, our president, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and your president, Azerbaijani President Aliyev, had a bilateral meeting, a very successful meeting. Since then, what results have been yielded from the negotiations and meetings?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to mention that last year marked the 30th anniversary since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of Azerbaijan. And of course, it's not a coincidence that our leaders have met in Samarkand. And I think that we can say that today's quality, very high quality of political dialogue between our two nations is due to the personal quality of relationship between our leaders, because they have, of course, a very strong chemistry on a number of issues, not only related to bilateral issues, but also the issues which pertain to international agenda. I think that both of them agreed that we need to do more in order to diversify our economic and trade relations. They agreed that, maintaining regular contacts at the level of leaders, members of the government, parliaments is quite important to maintain this relationship and to deepen it. And they actually agreed to instruct different line ministries in order to explore all the untapped opportunities. I know that we have been very active in trying to develop inter-regional decentralized cooperation between different cities and regions of two countries. Of course, we would be very happy if China and Chinese people would consider Azerbaijan as a new attractive tourist destination. So they agreed that there should be a direct air link restored quite soon between our two nations, so that we can have this people-to-people contacts, which is extremely important. Of course, people love and adore Chinese culture, very rich history, but it's another thing when you have a personal opportunity to come and to discover a country for your own. So that's why I think, and it's true also both ways.
What are some of the interesting projects that are going on between the two countries in terms of cooperation in other areas?
Well, actually, Azerbaijan is known as a traditional provider of energy. Oil and gas, and of course you know that Azerbaijan has been playing a very important role ensuring the energy security, for example, of European continent. Given the geopolitical context of events which we have in our broader region, given the growing geo-economic importance of connectivity, I think that both leaders, they have agreed that we can do more in order to benefit from this initiative that was launched 10 years ago by China, One Belt, One Road initiative. And here I should mention that Azerbaijan, because of its geographic location, has played already a role of a kind of a linchpin, the country which ensured the linkage between East and West. So we have been very active in making sure that Trans-Caspian international transport corridor is functioning, because we have constructed the railroad Baku-Tbilisi-Kars, which unites basically Caspian Sea to the Black Sea and then to Turkey. Also, we have built recently a state-of-the-art modern maritime port of Baku. So these are all infrastructures which could be very much used in order to implement the so-called middle corridor. And which could be harmonized with this initiative, One Belt, One Road initiative, which Azerbaijan fully supports. Because we believe that in the world where we are moving towards a multipolar world, when interdependence is growing. So I think that the more countries are connected to each other, the easier and the smoother is this connection, the better would be for the people of all nations. So I think that that is one of the major projects to see how we can do it in practice.
Sure, Ambassador, as you rightly mentioned, this year is a very important year for the Belt and Road Initiative. It's the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. Would you please share with us one or two concrete benefits that this initiative has brought to Azerbaijan and the people of Azerbaijan?
Well, I think that in general terms, connectivity means stability, it means development, it means also predictability in international relations, because when you connect nations or countries through necessary infrastructure, that is one of the guarantees that there would not be any conflicts or any confrontations, because all nations will be interested to preserve this as an asset. So from that point of view, of course, when One Belt and One Road initiative was officially announced back in 2013, Azerbaijan already for some time has played, a role of a connector between different continents. Because since 2006, Azerbaijan started to export its crude oil through Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan major oil export pipeline from our sector in the Caspian Sea to the Western markets. So that's why it was the question of harmonizing these two initiatives. And I think that now that I was talking about middle corridor, we need to see how this middle corridor could be weaved in this excellent initiative that China and Chinese government has put forward. So I think that the benefits will be evident, because it will lead to more trade, to more economic exchanges, to more human traffic. It's not about only logistics and transport. It's also about, profiting from these opportunities to make movement of people much easier. So that's why I think that it very much coincides with our national strategy of serving as a reliable partners and as a connecting, element in bringing nations together.
Certainly. And I understand that the Chinese language has become very popular as a second language to learn in Azerbaijan. Would you please tell us about that?
Yes, because it is logical and it is natural, because with the increased importance of China in the world, not only in global affairs but also in terms of people-to-people contacts, there is a more and more interest among youngsters in Azerbaijan to discover this language. I can even boast that my elder daughter, she started to study Chinese language. And of course, I think that if we judge by the number of students who are traveling to your beautiful country in order to involve in in-depth study of Chinese language and culture, we can see that this progress has been exponential. So we also have a couple of centers, cultural centers, which are bearing the name of Confucius. So Chinese is not only Chinese language which is interesting for Azerbaijani people and for the youngsters, it's also the Chinese culture, its philosophy, its way of life. And I think that explains important upsurge in the number of people who would like to know for themselves what is it all about.
历史上，阿塞拜疆与亚美尼亚在纳卡地区的纷争由来已久。纳卡地区位于南高加索，面积大约4400平方公里。苏联时期，它是阿塞拜疆西南部的一个自治州，但当地居民多数为亚美尼亚族人，一直谋求将纳卡地区并入亚美尼亚。1988年，主要由亚美尼亚族人组成的纳卡州权力机构要求把这一地区划归亚美尼亚。阿塞拜疆方面坚决拒绝，该州阿塞拜疆、亚美尼亚两族之间爆发武装冲突。1994年，双方在欧洲安全与合作组织明斯克小组的斡旋下达成停火。此后，纳卡地区由当地自行成立的阿尔扎赫共和国控制，但该共和国并未获得国际社会的承认，当地的归属问题仍悬而未决。多年来，两国在这一地区时有摩擦，始于2020年9月底的新一轮冲突是双方自1994年停火以来最为严重的交战，造成了包括平民在内的4000余人死亡，8000余人受伤，数万人流离失所。 同年的11月，两国与俄罗斯签署声明，宣布纳卡地区全面停火，俄方在该地区部署维和部队。但这份协议并未得到很好的遵守。2022年乌克兰危机升级后，纳卡局势再度紧张。
You know that since early 90s, for almost 3 decades, 1/5 of Azerbaijan's territory has been under illegal foreign occupation, and of course this has resulted in mass forceful displacement of people, complete destruction of almost 1/8 of the territory of the country. So that's why we now want to turn the page of hostility or animosity with Armenia. You know that in November 2020, the Second Karabakh War was over. Azerbaijan liberated territories which have been under foreign occupation for a long time. We actually proposed to Armenia a peace agenda. And I think that now that we have restored our territorial integrity and also historical justice, I think that we have a good chance to turn over the page of animosity and try to build good neighborly, peaceful relations with Armenia. Because we think that this region deserves a better future.
There's a lack of trust, isn't it, historically? That seems to be one of the obstacles.
You're very much right, and it is also something quite natural, because when you have, for almost 3 decades, 2 neighboring nations, in open confrontation, in wars which cost, lives of tens of thousands of people. In our case, it also is a scar which is still very fresh in the souls of hundreds of thousands of people who have been deprived of everything. They have been just expelled from their homes, and all their families have been affected. So it's very natural that there is no trust. And unfortunately, confidence remains a rare commodity, as they say, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But I think this is something which is not insurmountable. I think sooner or later we have to build this trust. But I think the biggest step that we can do in order to speed up this process is at least to implement fully and with due diligence the commitments that you have already undertaken. Because if you say one thing today and then tomorrow you do not implement it, of course that affects even further the lack of trust. So I think that the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, by meeting each other for so many times, they have been able, I think, to develop the understanding that this trust needs to be maintained, it needs to be built upon. But as I said, actions, they speak louder than words. So that's why we expect our colleagues from Armenia to deliver on the promises that they have given.
亚美尼亚8月12日呼吁联合国安理会就纳卡地区问题举行危机会议，指责阿塞拜疆关闭了纳卡地区与亚美尼亚之间的唯一通道拉钦走廊的交通，称该地区人道主义状况恶化。今年7月15日，在布鲁塞尔举行的最新一轮纳卡问题和平谈判未能取得突破性进展。亚美尼亚总理帕什尼扬称，亚美尼亚和阿塞拜疆很有可能爆发新的战争。然而，就在5月25日，帕什尼扬在俄罗斯表示，亚美尼亚和阿塞拜疆已经同意相互承认彼此的领土完整，并在国际机制框架内确保纳卡地区居民权利和安全问题。阿塞拜疆总统阿里耶夫也表示，阿方对亚美尼亚没有领土要求。考虑到亚美尼亚正式承认纳卡地区是阿塞拜疆的一部分，阿亚之间有可能达成和平协议。在承认彼此领土完整的基础上，实现两国关系正常化具有重要的先决条件。
Well, there have been reports that Azerbaijan and Armenia are in peace talks for a peace agreement. How is that going?
Well, now it's going much better than it did, for example, half a year ago. Because as of this May, we have seen resumed intensive rounds of negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan at the level of leaders, but also at the level of foreign ministers and other levels. So I think that the process being continued with such an intensity is already a good thing. But of course, negotiations for the sake of negotiations are not going to help us, build sustainable peace. So that's why we very much look forward to some concrete, tangible results of these negotiations. And now we are in the process of preparing the ground for the return of hundreds of thousands of internally displaced persons of Azerbaijani origin, which at the time had been subjected to ethnic cleansing and they were forcefully removed from their homes. But going back to the peace process, I think that we should be rather cautiously optimistic, because I think that recently we have seen several signs which allude to this probability of reaching some tangible progress. What was important for us recently was the statement by Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan, who expressed the recognition by Armenia of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, including the Karabakh region. So for us, this was an important element that allowed us to believe that we're not that far from reaching the basic agreement. But as it often happens, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So you have not only to pronounce certain statement, but also to deliver on its implementation. And from this point of view, we very much look forward to Armenia's implementation of all of the commitments that they have already undertaken. In the first place, they have to complete and to finalize the withdrawal of their armed forces from the sovereign territory of Azerbaijan, because even today, 2.5 years after the ceasefire agreement was signed, there are still 10,000 of regular units of Armenian armed forces which are illegally in the Azerbaijani Karabakh region.
Right. Then you mentioned the prerequisites for Azerbaijan for signing this peace treaty. What about for the Armenians? What are they asking for?
Well, basically now what we are discussing is to, as I said, to agree on the text of the treaty. So for Armenia, it's also very important that the principles which have been reflected in this draft are also kind of implemented by Azerbaijan. So what is important to understand is that this peace treaty is based on 5 fundamental principles that I mentioned, which are permitted by reciprocity. So whatever we expect from Armenia, we are ready to deliver ourselves.
Right.
So I think that is the common denominator which allows both nations to believe that this is a doable thing. So what we need is, we expect both parties to continue to demonstrate their political courage, but also adherence to the already undertaken commitments. So that's why I think that the sooner the Armenian troops will leave completely Azerbaijani sovereign territory, the bigger are the chances that we can finalize these negotiations in a relatively short period of time.
There are other countries that have tried to mediate, for example, Russia and the US. What roles have they played?
Well, of course, any facilitator who wants to help Armenia and Azerbaijan overcome the remaining difficulties is welcome. But our principled position is that it belongs to Azerbaijan and to Armenia to sort out their differences in the first place. So whoever is a facilitator, they are not party to negotiations per se. They try just to facilitate, they try to create the conditions, to organize the venues and the to provide political support.
Right.
But we maintain that negotiations which are aimed at reaching a sustainable long-term peace need to remain a bilateral exercise. So that's why no matter where we hold our negotiations, be it in Moscow or in Brussels or in Washington, D.C., the main part is to be played by Armenia and by Azerbaijan. And I think that if we continue this trend, it has much more chances for success than the other way around. Because unfortunately, we have a very negative experience of years of mediation by the so-called OSCE Minsk group, which was made up of 3 co-chair countries, US, France and Russia, which unfortunately failed to help both countries to achieve the final settlement. So that's why we believe that if Armenia and Azerbaijan have enough of political will, courage, determination and persistence, they have all the chances to achieve the expected result, with, of course, positive facilitation of those who want to be of assistance and not complicate things further.
Great. Thank you very much, Ambassador Əmirbəyov, to come on our show, and thank you for sharing with us all your insights